We do have new people here today that not everybody knows. So when you come up, Jonathan, you can introduce yourself. Before we get started with, though, we do have public comment from Jane Nieman. So,
Is this one on too? Sure. Okay.
Jane, you know, I don't have a timer, but 3 minutes or so.
How much?
3 minutes-ish.
Okay,
So
it won't be too long.
Okay.
So my name is Jane Nieman. I am a French teacher at Union High School. I've worked for Grand Rapids Public for 13 years. I spent 11 years teaching college French and working on a higher level diploma before I came to GRPS. I started at Creston, went to City, and now have been at Union now for about 9 years. I wanted to talk to you about the teacher evaluation system. You've heard previous comment about many of the complaints and problems with the process. I just wanted to add a couple of things today, rather than repeat what has already been stated about the problems with the process. I have heard from 2 administrators in my building about the streamlining the process to some extent. I heard a suggestion today about possibly there is a year off for teachers who are highly effective, so many years in a row. And because of the amount of teachers to evaluate in some of the larger buildings, it becomes a huge time commitment for principals and assistant principals in those buildings. It might be nice to see teachers on the higher end of the effective scale also perhaps go down to 1 observation a year. That was a suggestion made to allow principals and APs to have more time to work with younger teachers or teachers that are in need of more and better quality feedback on their practice. So that was a suggestion I wanted to bring to the Academic Achievement Committee's attention as something to facilitate the process. Another thing I want to talk about was an experience I had and some of my fellow GRPS teachers. This summer we worked for 3 days with the Michigan Program Network, which was a group out of Teaching Works in Ann Arbor, and they have, over the last 5 or 6 years, they have gotten on board with a lot of the colleges and universities in Michigan that have teacher ed programs, working to improve the teacher education process for novice teachers. And what they are doing right now is fascinating, and it's very exciting because what they're doing is in response to all these younger teachers saying they're not properly prepared for what they actually see in classrooms, is they are breaking down the practice of teaching, and they have worked with the Board of Education, the State Board of Ed, to define 21 practices that are essential to a good teacher. And they have focused on, I believe, the top 7. And they are literally breaking these practices down, explaining a new concept, leading a classroom discussion, skills that good teachers have to have, but often don't have when they come out of a teacher ed program. And I want to encourage the board to look at what they are doing, seeing some of these breakdowns of teacher practice, not because maybe we don't know these things, but to have it out there in print for you. And when you're going to observe a teacher, or when a teacher is reflecting on their own practice, it really helps to have, what really makes up a good explanation of a new concept for a high school student. What's involved in that? Relevant and accurate analogies, explaining a concept clearly, have good visuals, leading a classroom discussion. What's a good start-off question? How do you direct that discussion? How do you prepare your students to have a quality classroom discussion? And they're doing that. They're breaking down the practice of teaching. The Danielson rubric, being one of the better rubrics, the language is very limited to all, most, some, none. And it is a bit vague. But what we're really talking about here when we evaluate teachers is, do they have good practice? Are they explaining concepts clearly and effectively? Are they leading classroom discussions that are respectful, on topic, and actually getting kids to reflect and state their ideas in clear and concise manner? So I really want to encourage you to look at that. I can email you with the name of the director of the Michigan Program Network. Grand Valley is very involved in this program, so they have information and a compilation of the data and the work that has been done over the past 5 years with the Michigan Program Network. But I think that when we have people coming in and observing practice once or twice a year, it's really helpful to have quality feedback. And varied on who evaluates you, you may have good feedback, you may not have good feedback. And if we're going to do this process and do it well, we need to do it right, but we also need to not make it a burden on our administrators and our teachers, and reward consistency. I think that we're seeing, as we do every fall, teachers come and go, administrators come and go. The consistency is important, and it's important to bring the new teachers into the fold and give them a positive experience. And so if they're getting good feedback from their administrators, they're going to want to stay, and they're going to feel valued, and they're going to feel like they can be mentored. And I think it's great, too, if we encourage our GRPS teachers to be novice teacher mentors, because that experience in and of itself helps us reflect on our practice. And what's coming out of the Michigan Program Network, I thought, was very valuable. It was a wonderful 3 days that we spent down at GVSU at the Eberhard Center. And I really encourage you to kind of...
I would like it if you'd send it to us.
Okay, I will do that. It was really wonderful. She just sent us a bunch of their materials by email, so I'll forward you those materials.
If you send them to Julie, she'll send them out to us.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds great. All right,
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, we'll be talking more about that. So, Jonathan, why don't you introduce yourself,
Yep.
and then we'll proceed.
Certainly. So my name is Jonathan Harper. I'm the new Director of Curriculum for Grand Rapids Public Schools. Good afternoon, Dr. Baker, Ms. Downs-Lewis, and Ms. Davis. I'm just here to introduce the agenda for today. So first up, we'll have an update around instructional council. And just so everybody's aware, Dr. Gunnar will be giving that update. She's the new point person for 2019-20 school year in relation to central office and instructional council. So Dr. Gunnar will provide that update. And then reports to the board, there's a teacher evaluation summary. So Dr. Gorman's actually going to come up, provide a recap summary of what was presented to the board at an earlier session to talk about next steps. And then we'll transition into a proposed process for getting feedback on the evaluation system from staff. And then Dr. Gorman will present his academic vision for 2019-20 to the Academic Achievement Committee. So, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
Hi. Today I was asked to define the role and relationship to the Board of Education on instructional council. And so what I did is I wrote a little summary that I'm going to read you. And then in your board packet, you have Article 7, correct? Article 7.
Yep.
Joint council/committees. So, in summary, the instructional council is responsible for initiating policy changes that affect and determine the instructional program or programs. The instructional council is created by the board and the Teachers Association. The members of the council establish processes for resolving issues that impact student achievement. The role of the instructional council is further explained in Article 7, which you have in your packet. And then I'm going to be the point person for the administration for this academic school year. This year, GREA will be chairing the committee, and we will be setting up a meeting with Mary Bounds to set dates and talk about membership. But I wanted to refer, since you have that in your packet, I wanted to give you a little bit more points.
And this is from the contract with
This is
GREA?
from contract language.
Okay.
Article 7, you have that in your packet, page 28. And so I just wanted to refer to further information. The council is composed of 14 members total, 7 that are from the employee group, the GREA, and 7 that are administrators. And the council seeks input before implementing policies that affect student achievement. And I'm not going to read you the whole article, just little snippets. And the council meets on a regular basis, usually monthly. We don't have those dates yet, but we're going to be setting those dates up before the school year begins.
How does this fit with kind of our previous understanding of the council and?
Well, I don't think it's much different, is it, than what we've had before?
No, you just wanted an update. You
Yeah.
asked for an update
Yeah.
of the role of the board and what it's comprised of, and so that's it in a
So the
nutshell.
language that's used, just to be clear, is basically the instructional council initiates and reviews policy changes or policies that impact student achievement, right?
Yes, it's
So that-
advisory.
Okay, and it's advisory, okay.
Yes, and it's
then
composed.
and that basically their job is to inform the board and other staff about their findings in an advisory manner.
Correct.
Not in a decision-making manner.
Correct.
Okay. So that is consistent, although I think it's, it's not necessarily always clear, so.
Right.
Right, as to what.
And I think, I don't know if it's a change, but I think that one of the things that's being sharpened is that it's coming through the academic committee in order to present to the board. So any either changes or any recommendations is coming here with details and then presenting it to the board in total as far as whatever the discussions were, right?
Isn't that what we've done?
So one thing that on which I would like to place emphasis, of course, it is an advisory council. There are, in many instances, financial implications when recommendations are made. And so even though we may be selecting a very comprehensive curriculum that's aligned to standards, we know that that particular committee can't say we absolutely need to do this for a school district. So it needs to be brought here, right? And then if there are financial implications or something else, then of course it's brought to finance committee or full board or whatever is needed. But this group is really vetting curricula, spending a tremendous amount of time to ensure that the curricula or the courses or anything related to classrooms are being shared and vetted and ultimately brought back to this group.
So I would say, just to clarify, that it is not new that the Academic Achievement Committee meeting it's just that the Academic Achievement Committee has been the vehicle that the board has made aware of the work of the Instructional Council. It's not that the Academic Achievement Committee has ever approved or disapproved unless it goes to finance. Now, Dr. Gorman was in a meeting. There is a committee of committee chairs that President Grant has initiated to kind of discuss these kinds of
Or
logistical.
committee chair.
Board committee chair, yeah.
Like you and
So, finance,
legislative.
legislate, and then academic, to discuss actually what that means. So that we currently don't approve curriculum changes. We're made aware of curriculum changes. The way that the board has approved curriculum changes has really been through purchasing curriculum that goes to the finance committee. And so the Academic Achievement Committee committee has never really approved or disapproved. There is a discussion about kind of perhaps tweaking that a little bit in terms of what role this committee plays in that process. But we haven't determined that yet. It doesn't really impact it yet. But currently, Instructional Council uses the Academic Achievement Committee to advise the board or to communicate what they have been doing to advise. But I mean, I would say that, again, I said this several times, is that when the Instructional Council works well, then it leads to a lot of confidence in the board because it usually means that there's consensus or people have come to agreement across these 14 members. When it hasn't worked well, then there's problems, but it's been a long time. In my opinion, it's been a long time since it hasn't worked well. But I remember those days, and so it's working really well now.
And we appreciate when a teacher or a group of teachers have a really good idea for a class, or a building principal or her team has a really good idea for a class or some adjustments that need to be made to curricula or other resources. So we really appreciate that, and this is really the place to get it off the ground, so to speak.
The one logistic thing is that, and I can't remember how it is, I know that the leadership of the council changes from year to
Correct.
year.
Correct.
Now, does that mean that last year the administration was the one that came here? Does that mean that this coming
So-
year, that someone from GREA will be the one giving us the report?
Absolutely. So Dr. Gunnell, from a district's perspective, is going to be our point person.
Okay.
This year, the leadership is GREA. If the GREA representative feels comfortable with coming here and presenting reports, that will absolutely happen.
Okay.
If the GREA leader of the group would like to work with Dr. Gunnell, and then Dr. Gunnell will provide the updates,
Okay.
I believe that's totally acceptable as well. We want to just make sure folks are comfortable with providing updates. We as the administration will do it, but if the GREA would like to do it, please feel free.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gunnell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon, Dr. Baker, Reverend Matthias, Ms. Downs-Lewis, Ms. Davis. I am going to finish up the agenda with 3 items, one of which is a summary of the teacher evaluation model. I will go through it relatively quickly. We would like to find ways to get staff feedback on the evaluation model, so I'm going to share with you our best thinking as to how we can get staff feedback on our current model. And then I'm going to briefly share with you what I'm going to share with the administrators on Monday when I meet with them for the first time around goals and metrics moving into the next school year. Okay? So let's start off with, of course, the GRPS evaluation system. All right? And as you can see, it's designed to improve student learning through increasing instructional effectiveness by fostering professional growth. The evaluation model is not a model that we are planning on using to get rid of employees. That is not the case. Ultimately, if we can help our teachers get better with really expert evaluators, it will ultimately make our students more proficient in the long run. And so that's the ultimate goal. Our current evaluation system reflects best practices, which we have measurable goals. The intent is to have ongoing feedback in practice and differentiated support, because we know that a veteran, highly effective teacher may have different areas on which he or she is going to focus than a brand new teacher. Ms. Downs-Lewis, you good to go?
Good to go,
Okay, just
finally.
making sure. All right.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. When the evaluation system was initially created, there was a team comprised of educators, building administrators, and central office administrators that put this together. And I ultimately believe moving forward, as you will see from what we are proposing, we are more than receptive to getting staff feedback as we try to create the very best evaluation system possible. Our GRPS evaluation system meets the mandates and requirements set forth by the state law. Let me just give you some system highlights and show you how all of the components are broken down. Okay? So in the chart below, you will see a student growth component. And of course, the student growth mandated by the state this year was 25%. That is going to increase to 40% in the 2019-20 school year. An observation rating based on which year we are focusing can go anywhere from 45 to 75%. That is right now when the principal or assistant principal goes into a classroom, observes a teacher, uses the Danielson rubric to rate that particular teacher. As you can see, that's 45 to 75%, and that is required by the state because that's one of the 4 models that we are allowed to use.
Dr. Grimm, just back up
Absolutely.
1 second.
Yes, please.
The 25 to 40% for student growth?
That's
And
correct.
that is based on the M-STEPs?
Mandated by the state.
Okay. Is that
So
the M-STEP?
M-STEP assessment,
Okay.
a MAP assessment,
Okay.
right?
Or any of
There
those.
needs to be a component which is based on the state assessment
Okay.
into the growth piece.
Okay.
Okay.
And so that's part of it, and then say we do 25% of it is the state part? So where do we get the
You
other
can have the
part?
breakdown from the measures of academic progress assessment and the MAP test,
Okay.
right? But you do have to use a portion of the state assessment,
Okay,
okay, for
But-
student growth.
okay. So what you're saying is that we can use the state assessment, but the rest of that 20% or whatever, is that just classroom?
So you have to use, of course, the state test has to be in the student growth
Okay,
component, okay? But you can also use your measures of academic progress, another component to fulfill that growth
Okay,
piece.
okay.
There are other districts that use district common assessments and things of that nature. We have opted to, as our district, use measures of academic progress, use the ACT or the SAT now, and the M-STEP assessment,
Okay,
okay?
all right.
All right. Next up, we have the tripod survey, which is a perception survey that is 10% of the evaluation. That is not required by state, but we believe that student voice is important. So that's why we currently have the tripod student survey. The professional responsibilities piece is one of the last things that a administrator rates the teacher on, and so that is 5%. Professional development, as of right now, the 5% is connected to attendance with professional development. So I think an optimal model would be, did you attend professional development, and can we see within your pedagogy or your classroom what you've learned in professional learning? Is that embedded into your practice? But as of right now, it's just, did you go to professional development or did you not?
What about if you're working on your master's degree or?
As of right now, our professional development is what we provide in the Grand Rapids Public Schools, okay? And then lastly, there's an educator attendance piece, which is required by the state.
And then, I'm sorry, so with professional development, there's a lot of options that teachers have. I mean, if they're art, if they're science, if they're math, then
Sure.
there's a variety of things that, boy, I want to take advantage of this. I really feel like I need that. Is that kind of the options that teachers have?
So absolutely. So you have, of course, some district mandated professional learning. You, in many instances, have some building mandated professional learning. In some instances, you have professional learning that you seek on your own based on areas on which you want to focus or learn more about or to help you get better. In other instances, through this evaluation process, a building administrator may say, you're struggling in this particular area, or this could be an area of growth, therefore I would like you to participate in this professional learning option. So there are really multiple pathways, but it's usually district, building, your own preference, or in consultation with your building administrator. Those are usually the 4 areas for professional learning. Does that answer your question, Reverend Matias?
Yeah, I don't want to get you off track.
Okay,
You
all
know, in
right.
terms
Please
of-
let me know. Well, I'm okay getting off track. Try to get back on. All right.
Well, then I'll get you off track.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Downs-Lewis.
I'm just curious about, like, it's 5% of the educators' attendance. Well, you know, what if you're sick with bronchitis and you're out for 3 weeks?
There are, when I think of, and I could be wrong, Ms. Pitts, I'm sick, things of that nature. Go ahead, please. I don't want to say anything incorrectly. Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So, obviously, FMLA protected illnesses are not counted against an employee because you can't, by law, take an adverse action against an employee for FMLA. So really what we do look at is non-FMLA attendance or non-approved attendance. So we have for new teachers, for example, if you're a brand new teacher and say you get pregnant, you wouldn't be eligible for FMLA, but under our contract, we'll give you personal illness leave for teachers. For all staff, we'll do that, but in the GRA, since we're talking about teachers right here, we give that benefit because we realize that you don't have enough time to have acquired that. So those kinds of things we won't. But but really what we're talking about are I'm taking 2 days here, I'm taking 3 days here, I'm taking, sometimes 4 or 5 days without a doctor's excuse.
Okay.
But at a certain point, if you take over, I believe right now we say 3 days, if you take more than 3 days, you're supposed to apply for a leave. So if you do not do those things, then those things are counted against you. Because right now, we have a goal for students that we want them to not be absent more than, I
Strive
think,
for fewer than 5, essentially.
right.
right.
And so we try to say,
Do
we'd
they
like
have-
teachers to kind of be in line with that 10,
Yeah.
it's in 10
Do
days.
do the teachers have in their contract a certain number of sick days that they can accrue and roll over from year to year?
Yeah, we have 6 days.
How
Mhm,
many
we have-
6 days can a teacher take?
I can't remember. I have to look. I have the
Okay, all
contract.
right,
I'll look.
okay.
I can tell you. I don't want to say because.
10?
Is it 10? Okay. Oh, there's my friend there.
Okay.
So, 10 is 10?
10 sick days.
Okay.
6 personal.
And we have personal leave. Yeah, I knew that.
Okay.
So, okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
So, but even with this, so might as well follow through. So
okay.
even with that, though, if someone is going to be out sick for more than 3 days in a row, they would still request a leave for that?
They need to request a leave. Now, people don't always do that, but we want them to because once you start getting way out of that, then we want to see whether you are FMLA eligible. The laws around these are extremely complex, but that's one of the things that we have to look for because by law, we have to account any illnesses that are FMLA eligible now, we have to start that time. So
Okay.
probably more than you want us to know, but.
Okay, yes. No more questions.
We're way in the weeds now.
Don't ask the lawyer these questions.
Okay. So next up, system highlights. All right, so based on feedback from stakeholders, there have been many changes that have happened as a result of their feedback. The use of the Danielson U rubric has been used in our school district for 20 years. Full disclosure, I would say the last 5 years, or maybe a little more than that, has been really intentional training with our administrators through Cambridge Education to ensure that we have inter-rater reliability, or the very best inter-rater reliability that we can possibly have, which essentially means if Dr. Gunno, Jonathan Harper, and I are evaluating a teacher, the scores should be very close. And the training that we go through, and I continue to even go through the training, is a Cambridge facilitator comes in, we observe a teacher in a classroom, we all come back. The evaluators have to match the facilitator from Cambridge Education Group at 70% or higher, right? So although many will say, well, it's not perfect based on the evaluator you have, we know it's very rigorous training, and my assumption is it probably keeps some folks up at night to ensure that they're well above that threshold. So there's a tremendous amount of training around the rubric that many years ago we did not have. So there was a question that was asked last time about what other state-approved tools are there out there. So there's the Marzano teacher evaluation model, the thoughtful classroom, the 5 dimensions of teaching and learning, and of course the Danielson rubric. I know that David Stite was here a couple of meetings ago, and I believe he shared with you that many of the approved tools are pretty comparable, right? And so you will find very few differences as you go through those rubrics. But we have used Danielson for a long time. We use an iteration of Danielson that is a little older. But when you start using the newest model of Danielson, because everything is a business now, you have to also purchase some online resources to accompany the newest iteration. Many of those online resources are very valuable resources for teachers and administrators. So I'm not saying that we never want to go down that road, but there are financial implications to get to the next iteration. Okay? All right. So,
Just so that I can.
absolutely, Mr. Matias.
So
Reverend
with the
Matias.
Danielson, again, some of the criticisms have
Sure.
been that it wasn't designed for that, and then those that were being trained were not teachers and those kinds of things. And so
So,
can you just
absolutely.
speak on
So,
that so that there's confidence
Sure.
going forward?
So I believe that was stated by Charlotte Danielson at one time. I think if you look at the newest iteration, she has partnered up with many companies that exclusively do teacher evaluation. And so therefore, maybe it was not the intent at the very beginning, but is moved into a model through iterations where it is absolutely used for teacher evaluation. And I believe that's supported with some of the things that we are now, that Danielson now provides. If you want to get the latest and greatest iteration, you have to buy products that show teachers what a particular domain looks like. So if the administrator marks a teacher down on a specific area, the teacher can look at some videos to say, oh, that's what it looks like in practice. So my assumption is Charlotte Danielson would not be partnering with companies that focus on evaluation if that were not the intent of her newest iterations of her rubric.
And may I add, too, that we actually personally contacted Charlotte Danielson and her organization, because I know this had come up. And we do have something that I believe that we submitted to you all in that last iteration where we talked to her specifically about that. And she did indicate, as Dr. Gorman is saying, that the way that we actually asked her to look at our whole system, and that was what she felt was a best practice and could be used for an evaluation purposes. So we did reach out to her specifically and ask that. And we have a little bit of a blurb, I believe, in one of the, that longer white paper that we gave you. We addressed that specifically. So I just
Thank you,
wanted
Ms.
to
Pitts.
come
Appreciate
up
it.
and say that.
Because we don't, as a board, I don't know if I'm speaking out of line, but we don't want to always kind of that record skip. We want to be able to definitively say, hey, we've looked at this, we're confident that going forward, the administration has adopted and is doing best practice in terms of our equipping our teachers, those that evaluate teachers, and as we're heading towards academic achievement and those things.
I think further affirmation is the state approved 4 models, one of which is the Danielson rubric.
Yeah.
Right? And so my assumption is that regardless of whatever model we used, there would be a little bit of criticism regardless. Okay? So let me just share some data with you in regards to our training and our certification. So before an administrator is allowed to do an evaluation, they must complete a 3-day training and certification process. So we are going to hire a handful of brand new administrators to our district. Many have come to us from neighboring districts where they have been administrators. We do not give them credit for being administrators in other districts from an evaluation perspective. We make them go through our Cambridge training before they're allowed to complete teacher evaluations. Almost all evaluators for GRPS have advanced degrees and have taught in the classroom. And many of our evaluators taught with GRPS before becoming administrators. We are very transparent with the numbers that we are sharing with you today. So 81 of our administrators have advanced degrees, which is 96.4%. And evaluators with teaching experience were at 97.6%. All new administrators since 2012 who evaluate and observe have teaching experience. And moving forward, under this administration, no matter how short it may be, we are not going to allow any administrators, any brand new administrators, to evaluate teachers who do not have teaching experience. That just makes sense. Okay? So you will see the numbers there, and
That's really important. So 97%
I know.
currently, because we hear all the time.
so
97% currently, no
Correct.
new since 2012.
correct, and
Without-
no new
and no
moving
new in the
forward.
future.
If you do not have a teaching experience moving forward, you will not be an assistant principal, you will not be a principal, because we want instructional leaders, not building managers.
That's right.
Currently, do teachers have the option to request a different evaluator?
They do not have the option, but what we do in situations where a teacher maybe receives a low rating, we pull in a second evaluator.
Okay.
Right? And in many instances, that's someone from Sharon's office who has teaching experience, an administrator from another building, and we have them go in with the Danielson rubric with no we don't want them to look at other evaluations or other observations. They go in and they rate them on the rubric how they were trained. Okay? All right. All right, so more effective teachers for GRPS students. The GRPS evaluation system, we believe, provides robust information regarding teacher strengths and areas of growth, more accurate determination of teacher effectiveness, clear expectations of effective practice for new teachers, and the new Teacher Academy sessions are designed around one of the 16 Danielson rubric components. So when we're onboarding our new teachers, we're letting them know how they're going to be evaluated, sharing the rubric with them, and walking them through components. We also use the data and the evaluation model in the selection of summer school teachers, and the reason we do that is because if you think about elementary summer school, we are targeting the students who are projected to be below proficiency in third grade reading, so we need our very best teachers in summer programming, literacy coaches, and other teacher placements. If we are truly about equity, we need to ensure that our highly effective teachers are in the schools that need them the most. You should not have a school with low levels of proficiency, with an entire teaching staff that is, of course, below effective. Now, we don't have anything like that, but we need to ensure that we have highly effective teachers in many of our buildings that are not doing as well academically. Okay. And then additionally, unfortunately, sometimes teachers need to get to an individualized development plan, which is when they're struggling. So we use the specific data from our evaluation model to support their work. So this is an interesting visual here. You see through the years the breakdown of ineffective to highly effective teachers. So I'll point out a couple of things. 2013, there were 6 ineffective teachers. Of course, that's gone up and down a little bit. 2018, 2019, in the entire system, there are 4 ineffective teachers. Okay. If you go to minimally effective, there were 67 in 2013-14. That number is now 31 in 2018-19 with some fluctuation throughout.
Now, if a teacher is at ineffective, they have a year to get it together, or is it 2 years, or how long do they have before we move to?
So you now have some board policy where, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Pitts, I hope I'm quoting you verbatim, 3 years of minimally effective.
Okay.
And I believe that is a new policy in our district, if I'm not mistaken, where a teacher can be dismissed on that even though it hasn't reached ineffective. As you can see, there are very few teachers who are rated ineffective. So these are the teachers in our district who have the most challenges.
We don't give ineffective teachers any time. We move on.
Ineffective is immediate.
Ineffective
Okay.
is immediate.
Mm-hmm.
Minimally effective, as Dr. Gorman says, we
Now
give
we
you
have the
3
3 years.
Right, for
Right.
3 years. And that's pretty much been our practice even before, but now at least
It's in the
that's
policy.
codified.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, a probationary teacher who becomes minimally effective in their 3rd, 4th, or 5th year, they're not eligible under our process for tenure, so we do move for them.
Okay.
We move.
Okay.
Does that answer?
At that point, they wouldn't get tenure and they wouldn't have a job.
Correct.
Thank you, Ms. Pitt.
You're welcome.
So if you look at the effective category, this is a little interesting. So 549 effective in 2013-14. As you see, there's a larger number in 2018-19. And there was a time, full disclosure, where there were many highly effective teachers, right? And I would almost say I would say in many instances that was the norm in buildings where lots of teachers were getting highly effective ratings. And I believe we have many highly effective teachers. But when the administrators started to be trained, truly trained, and they know how to use the rubric and they have inter-rater reliability, there were fewer teachers who landed in that highly effective area. Okay? So as you can see, in 2013-14 for highly effective, it was 563. That number is now 410 and has been as low as 331. And as you can see, there have been tweaks throughout the years, but there are fewer highly effective teachers and more effective teachers. But the point I would like to share with everyone is there are very few ineffective teachers in the school district, and there are very few minimally effective teachers in the school district.
Now,
And-
would,
Go ahead, please.
no, I'm just wondering, would the difference between highly effective and effective, would some of that difference account for the fact that they were being evaluated differently, more strenuously?
I think when the administrators are trained on the rubric and we take out as much subjectivity as possible,
Okay.
and you're relying exclusively on the rubric, either you see it or you don't, I believe that factored into possibly many teachers moving from highly effective to effective.
Okay. Now, one of the concerns that I heard
Sure.
from my friends was that they're concerned about this 40%, which sounds like,
Sure.
and they're concerned that some of our kids, have trouble, and if you have a classroom of kids who have problems and 40% of their, the teacher's evaluation is a reflection of those scores that the kids earn on these standardized tests, they're afraid that they'll never see highly effective again.
So a couple of things. We're looking at growth, okay? We're not only looking exclusively at M-STEP, we're also looking at measures of academic progress,
Okay.
right? And do I think 40% is high? It's getting up there, absolutely, right? That's something that is mandated by the state, right? So because the stakes are so high from a state level, we need to ensure that we have the very best evaluators that are trained to ensure that those ratings are as accurate as they can be. Right? So this next slide
And the
is,
Danielson isn't impacted by that because it's still an evaluation. So it's just that growth number. Then
think
there's not much that can be done about it.
correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Downs-Lewis, but I think the point you were trying to make is if 40%
Yeah.
is the state data, there's only 60% that can be used for
Yeah.
other factors.
Yeah, that's right.
Therefore, that's why we, as administrators, have to ensure that we get the observation piece right.
Okay, yeah, that is what I meant.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, so the next slide, this is teachers with a minimally effective rating, okay? So if you look at 2014-15, there were 52 teachers with a minimally effective rating, okay? And then if you look one over, the number of minimally effective teachers who improved to effective or highly effective. So out of that particular group, 52 received the minimally effective. A little less than half improved their scores. So 48% of those teachers improved to an effective or a highly effective.
Is that within that school year or?
So that's with, so teachers that were, and so in 2020, let's say I go in for the first evaluation rating and you're minimally effective. 48% of those folks on the next time they were observed were able to increase.
Okay, so same school year.
Correct, correct. And then you've got a 5-year average of 62% of folks who have improved. So if we're truly about improvement, I think this is a pretty good model, right? Okay. All right, improved outcomes for students. Of course, students' long-term outcomes, including the likelihood of going to college, earning potential, family creation, are impacted positively or negatively based on the effectiveness of their teachers. And I believe we all want an effective, at least, or a highly effective instructor in front of our students. And as you can see from a few slides ago, there are many effective and many highly effective teachers in the Grand Rapids Public Schools, right? And since the implementation of our GRPS evaluation system, students are more likely to have an effective teacher in front of them every day.
Do you know, I know that people can go on, like when you're looking for a house or anything like that, and they can go on and take a look at the Grand Rapids Public Schools, and it breaks down according to the schools and how many effective and ineffective teachers and so on.
Absolutely.
Do you know how often they change that? Because it seems to me that, is it updated as?
It's the annual update.
It is, okay.
Actually, I'm sorry, Sharon. Ms. Pitt's office. It is their. They have a. It is our job to update those data every single year, not only from a teacher's perspective, but also an administrator's perspective in our school district. Every single year, those have to be updated. Okay? All right. So That is a summary of our evaluation system. I'm sorry if it went a little longer. It wasn't supposed to go that long, but I hope we were able to answer, I and my colleague Sharon, I hope we were able to answer your questions. Now, this is our proposed research agenda moving forward. Okay, this is what we would like to do to ensure that we hear from our stakeholders on our evaluation system. All right, so we conducted a review of all the research tools that were used around the state. Based on the findings from basis research recommended to the academic achievement team, GRPS is considering taking on our stakeholders' perspectives of the evaluation model. Okay? If we choose to move forward with getting a stakeholders' perceptions, basis policy research believes that the following tasks will meet the needs of our school district. So it's broken down into a few areas. Okay? So here's the first area. Basis research is going to work with our GRPS staff to ensure that all of our stakeholders understand the evaluation model and all of its components. So that's really the first step. Okay? The second step is we are not going to do anything. Basis research is going to meet with our GREA president and also our UNISERV director, because we know that there have been some concerns about our evaluation model, and we heard some in public comment this evening. So before this all begins, there's going to be some fact finding, if there's really understanding in the system about the evaluation model. And then we are also going to bring in the Teachers Union President and UNISERV Director to hear about any other concerns that may arise or may have arisen. Okay. Between November and December, we are our basis is proposing focus groups, 3 groups of teachers from various positions in the school district with 3 or 5 participants per group. These numbers may look a little small, but we will be getting input from all of the teachers, and you will see that in a subsequent slide. In addition to the teachers' perspectives on the evaluation model, we also feel that it's important to learn from the administrators, those who are conducting the evaluations, to get their feelings on the evaluation model. I think that is important as well. It can't just be the folks who are being observed. It also has to be folks who are doing the observing. Okay. Task 3, basis is going to be developing a survey, and you can see from the bullet points what is going to be included in the survey. So the first one is a teacher administrator profile. The second one is feedback on the participants' understanding of the major evaluation components that I shared with you in a previous slide, the student growth, the classroom observations, etc. The implementation on the evaluation system, and I believe this is really important. So this is how many times a year am I observed? What does the feedback look like? What happens if I'm having some challenges in a particular area? Am I receiving the supports I need, etc.? And then lastly, the 4th bullet, the overall satisfaction. It's going to be an open-ended, kind of qualitative question that's asked. And then our goal is to survey all GRPS teachers and administrators in January and February of 2020. The survey will be administered by Basis Policy Research with assurances to participants that their responses will be confidential and results will be aggregated and summarized in their report. Okay? And then lastly, in spring of 2020, there will be a 10 to 15-page report that summarizes the results. I am also requesting an executive summary. 10 to 15 pages can be voluminous, but we want to ensure that we hear everything about the model. But then I'm also proposing, working with Basis, that they review or include this executive summary for board, stakeholders, et cetera, if that makes sense.
Now, I think we talked about this when Basis was here, but remind me again, how much is this going to cost us, or?
So it is not going to cost the district anything.
Okay, I kind of
to do
thought
this.
that was it, yeah.
We have some outside dollars
Okay.
for some kind of previous survey work that we can carry over to help with this. Okay? So I guess.
They'll norm this to other districts.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So that is a summary of the evaluation system and our plan moving forward to seek out feedback on our evaluation system, right? And it is my goal. It is my goal to be fully transparent as possible. We want to hear from folks. Of course, basis is ensuring that there's anonymity with everybody, so we don't need to be fearful to complete it. But I think it's a really nice step in the right direction to hear from our stakeholders. Ms. Pitts?
Yes, I just wanted to give just a qualification to the funding piece. Right now, we have a grant that ends in December, so we'll be using all of that money, but we are committed to, and we believe, because we've not had a problem before, that we'll be able to get a grant for the second piece of that. So I just wanted to
Thank you.
qualify.
Yep,
Okay.
no problem. We are not using GRPS funds to do it. Okay. All right, so introduction to the academic vision. I think during this time of transition, the last thing that we are trying to do is disrupt the system with a million new initiatives. So we are going to stay focused on a few items that I believe are important to the system. I would love to review those with you right now. They're very short. And of course, take your feedback as we move forward. So I'm meeting with the administrators on Monday at our professional learning experience called Leading the GRPS Way. This is something that I led in my previous role, but this will be the first time I lead it as the interim superintendent. We are going to continue to focus on our big three academic priorities, which are knowledge of standards, backwards mapping, and assessment literacy. Those three are very important because if our ultimate goal is proficiency for all students, we need to ensure that we're teaching the standards in our classrooms, and we need to ensure that we're providing our teachers the necessary resources to teach said standards. Secondly, we need to ensure that we backwards map so that all the material in the course is covered, or all of the material that is being assessed on the state assessment, which ultimately determines proficiency for our students, is covered. And then lastly, we need to have assessment literacy so that our teachers are familiar with both formative and summative assessments, but probably most importantly, familiar with the items on which the students are going to be assessed in the spring of each year. I am not a proponent of testing our students like crazy. I would like to scale back on assessments, but we have to face facts that our students and our schools are judged on one test that they take every single year. And shame on us if our students are not prepared for those assessments. That doesn't mean teaching to the test. That means using our very talented educators to deliver our content in a way that's engaging to ensure that all standards are met. So that's the goal. Secondly, this summer, so I said we're not going to deviate from what we've previously done, but many of our administrators and teachers this year had the opportunity to participate in a professional learning experience by Dr. Jeff Howard from Harvard University, where he focuses on efficacy. And what this essentially is mobilizing adults and students around effort. And I believe that the professional learning that took place this summer really resonated with the schools that were involved and resonated with our building administrators. And I want our staff to continue to learn about this throughout the school year. We're not mandating that you have an efficacious learning environment. We're not doing that now, but we are going to use this as a learning year to learn more about efficacy and to learn how effort truly creates ability for our students and teachers. We need to continue.
What's his name again?
Jeff Howard from Harvard. We need to continue to use data to drive instruction. So whether we are using a continuous cycle of school improvement, a ROSI cycle, some of the models that were introduced to us, the self-directed improvement system by Jeff Howard, we need to, in our PLCs, use data to drive instruction, not only at the school level, but also the classroom level. So in layman's terms, I give an assessment to my students. I teach. I give a baseline assessment to my students. I find out the areas in which some or all of my students are struggling. I address those areas. If there are some students who have not reached mastery, I differentiate my instruction. I teach in a different way to ensure that all of my class or most of my class begins to master the content. And we continue to do that until all of the standards are met. And I know that's very complicated. I know it's complicated when you have students who, in some instances, may be a couple of grade levels behind. I understand that. But our ultimate goal is proficiency for all students. Okay? The fourth bullet is an area that has not been addressed in any academic plan as long as I've been working, supporting Teresa's work for 7 years. This is creating learning environments that are conducive to learning. And what we mean by that is there are some non-negotiables around classroom management that we all should have. And I don't believe that we've explicitly shared those with our teachers in the past, and we're going to do that this year. There are a couple of texts that I would like to reference around our conducive classroom environments. Much of the work is from Marzano. One's an older text, 2003, which is classroom management that works. And some of the practices in there, research-based practices, just make good common sense. Learning every student's name in your class, reaching out to families in the first few weeks of school, creating seating charts that are conducive to learning. There are some things that we just assume our folks should know, that we're going to be very explicit to ensure they have them in their classrooms, and we're going to follow up with providing materials to principals that support those areas, right, and provide professional learning in those areas. And then lastly, we need to continue as a school district to focus on equity. It doesn't mean that everybody gets the same thing. There may be buildings that are staffed differently than others based on the students they serve. There may be students who need more time. There may be students who need more support. We as a district need to continue to be committed to equity. Next slide, and then I'll wrap up. As you can see, we have a tight focus for the upcoming school year. Our district level goals are clear and concise. There are very few buildings over a 5-year period of time that have made significant gains on M-STEP. Over the last 5 years, we've had some tick-ups in some areas, some incremental jumps, but if we truly want to move our school district forward, we need to make more than incremental jumps in the next few years. We need to have more students reach proficiency. The second one, ensure more students are college and career ready. In 6 of the last 7 years, we have increased college readiness in this school district, which is measured by the SAT or the ACT. Last year in the state of Michigan, almost every single school district went backwards from a college readiness perspective. My assumption is some folks will want to chalk this up to the snow days that we had, but I assume that if you miss even 10 or 12 days, I guess my argument would be if you're in 11th grade, you've had 12 years of schooling, and the 12 snow days shouldn't mean all that much. Now, that said, there are some things you do from a technical perspective to prepare students for high-stakes assessments, and much of that time was probably lost as a result of some snow days. So there may be one, if you think of districts that are moving in the right direction, they don't all go straight up. They go up, maybe dip a little bit, and then they do this. And so we are hopeful that we will continue to improve in college and career readiness. Increase graduation rates to meet the state average or above. As you know, when Superintendent Weatherall-Neal took over 7 years ago, our school district had a 44% graduation rate. We are now at a 71% graduation rate. I am confident that within the next 2 years, we will reach the state average and the federal average, which is around 80%. And I think that is incredibly miraculous when you think of the predicament we were in 7 or 8 years ago. So we're going to continue focusing on that. The last piece is super important, and it's one thing that keeps me up at night in this new role, which is the 3rd grade reading law. Okay? So The cut score is 1252. So that essentially means that every single third grader in the state of Michigan has to receive a score of 1252 or above to be promoted to the fourth grade. Now, that cut score is incredibly low. That cut score is not proficiency. That cut score is closer to a second grade number than it is a third grade number. Okay? That said, in the entire district right now, there are about 80 students who are below a 1252. Right? So if those data do not change on next year's assessment, 80 or so students will be held back. Now, there are some good cause exemptions for students who are new to the country, students with IEPs, students who've already been retained, etc. But if we know as a school district that we are not close to having 100% of our third graders on grade level, we know that something drastic has to be done, and unfortunately, there will be students who will have to be retained. Our goal is to get every single student above that 1252. Because there are things you can do if students go below it, but I assume that Grand Rapids Public Schools, being one of the top, the 10 largest districts in the state of Michigan, doesn't want to submit 0 to the state when districts that are much smaller are submitting much larger numbers. How can we avoid that? Get everybody above a 1252.
Now, will
Okay.
we be focusing on third grade in some special way this year?
Okay.
Well, summer school.
But anything during the school year?
So kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade, right? Focusing on all of those grades. There are a couple of adjustments that we are going to make going into this school year to support this piece, and we've already begun doing it. This year's summer school was a targeted summer school for those students who were having challenges in reading and those who are in jeopardy of not being proficient on the assessment. So that's one thing. Secondly, we are adding a position in all of the buildings, which will be a stipend for a teacher to support the school from an accountability perspective. There's a tremendous amount of paperwork that our teachers have in regards to as it connects to this law, and I know I want to, and my colleagues want teachers to spend their time focusing on instruction and not tedious work. So we're going to have a colleague supporting that to ensure all the accountability is in place. Jonathan Harper and I have been speaking about what the requirements are right now. In our elementary schools, there are 4 folders that all of our teachers must have. So one for English, one for math, one for science, and one for social studies that are connected to the third grade reading law. That is a tremendous amount that we're asking of our teachers. So what we are going to do this year, moving forward, and I'm letting the cat out of the bag a little bit because I'm sharing this with principals on Monday, we are going to reduce that to 1 folder, right? But that 1 folder needs to be comprehensive. And we're not just taking 4 and making it 1. We're trying to make it user-friendly. And it will specifically be on English language arts. Maybe we'll tie some others to it. But 4 is just way too much to manage for our teachers. Okay? So we are also going to have to ensure, as a school district, there's a tremendous amount of communication with our families around this law. Now, we've already done that. We're trying to prepare them for the law. There also needs to be a handoff from summer school to school in the fall. Who grew this summer from an academic reading perspective and who did not. And if kids did grow from a reading perspective or a Lexile level, how can we continue to get that going? And if students were stagnant, what's the new plan for differentiation to help them ultimately get better? Right? So I believe that concludes my presentation. I'm sorry if it was a little comprehensive, but at this time, if you have questions, please let me know.
Any questions on this last portion?
I appreciate, communicating to our teachers and their leadership in terms of this particular issue, and in particular our parents. I think the more our parents are informed and know that the 1252 number what that might mean.
Absolutely.
In terms of daily reading or other kinds of things like that. I'm also wondering how you intend to take advantage of some of our higher achieving schools, our what is the XQ schools, where there's a lot of investment in some creative ways of teaching and other kinds of things that are going to, that we can learn from that, and it's not exclusive to just that arena. But really are other schools that seem to be doing well, both from parents encouraging parents, but also teachers, and then academically, really, hey, I'm doing this. These are pieces that we're learning that we can borrow from each other, as opposed to reconstructing it again. So just from an informed basis as a district, really, I'm just wondering how you see that.
So I don't necessarily want to copy what some of the high-performing schools are doing. And let me clarify. There are 4 schools in the district that are test-in schools, right? Blandford Zoo, Center for Economicology, and City. All of those schools, you have to be in the 50th percentile or above to be a student there. So all of those students in all of those schools are on grade level. And I am so proud of the accomplishments of those schools. What I think we need to pay attention to, Reverend Matias, is a neighborhood school, right? A neighborhood school that is getting results over a 5-year period of time, significant results, with maybe students who are not close to the 50th percentile. We have a school in our school district, Stocking, where they, in some instances, over the last 5 years, had single-digit proficiency, and now they have half of the kids in the building who are proficient in mathematics. So when we're talking about how can we share what's being done, this is no slight against our test-ins. Our test-ins do wonderfully. A school like City is still 40% free or reduced lunch, and they're the 3rd highest achieving high school in the state of Michigan. But I would like us to take a closer look at schools that have 90% poverty, 30% English learners, and the metrics are moving in the right direction, not incrementally, but substantially. I would like us to look at their practices and then see if we can emulate their practices. Because I'll tell you what, it starts with an instructional leader as a principal. It starts with some very talented teachers, all the resources they need in that classroom, professional learning that is connected to the standards that are taught in rooms every single day. So I want to take nothing away from those high-achieving schools, those 99th percentile schools, but I want to look closely at schools that went from single-digit proficiency to 40% proficient, 50% proficient, because that's not happening everywhere.
Good.
Any other?
I like that stuff. It's good
Yeah, I mean, I get,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people perhaps in the interim role, want something flashy, sexy, that's going to bring a lot of attention and looks good. But this is just the real hard work that comes from your thing. And I really appreciate not just the idea of equity. Lots of people talk about equity, but the analysis of what equity looks like and where you learn from. And so I think that, to some extent, the board, we often hear about inequities in the district, and it's usually an analysis of the test-in schools versus the rest of the schools. But I think that what you're saying is real. It's we're learning from good schools and communities that aren't tested schools that are doing good work. So, and then focusing on things that have to happen, increase college readiness and making sure that 3rd graders read. We have talked about the next meeting.
Thank you.
Would be, a major topic for the next meeting would be the 3rd grade reading, and we would spend more time with nuts and bolts. We are presumably going to, put the teacher evaluation discussions on hold until March after this is done.
You'll have to take this to the board to have them approve of this, or?
We don't know, because it's just the administration is deciding to do.
Oh, okay.
I guess based on feedback from board members, from stakeholders,
Yeah.
we believe there's a need to hear from our folks.
Yeah, so,
So you'll just present this at a regular board meeting, if this is something we're going to do?
If you're asking us to do it, we'll absolutely do it. If not, we will get this going and get the results for you.
oh yeah, we certainly would encourage you to go ahead, so that proceed with that if you need that.
Absolutely.
I guess that, there was a question. In terms of how it's presented, that can be discussed with
right.
whoever the president is at that time and, and whoever the.
Well, yeah, but I mean, as far as just telling the entire board, not necessarily all the details, but that we are going to do this, and we are.
Yeah, I'd like to.
interested in this
That's, actually, before we move on to next time,
Sure.
I would like to, I'm not sure because I don't know if you've planned the agenda yet with the president, but,
For Monday's
Monday's
board
meeting?
meeting, that's
Yeah.
already completed, yes.
okay. Will there be a academic achievement committee update?
Dr. Baker, I'd have to reference it in my office. I'm sorry, I don't have that.
Yeah, if-
I believe there is. All committees have an update.
I think
Right,
so,
I was
huh?
just saying, I don't know, I will make reference to this in my update about the two major items that
There
we
you go.
discussed today, the teacher evaluation plan and then also your vision. I will make reference to that. And I don't know when these documents would be in, all the board can get these documents even
Right.
if it's not in our minutes yet. So I'll
But I
make
think
reference
it's
to it.
important that some of the board members see some of that information about how many people and how well qualified these people are to do evaluations and so on and so forth.
Right, and I think, yeah, and I want to really focus on that. And then, so this is either, if it isn't in our packet for Monday's meeting, it is already at board members' availability. So, and I'll go through and highlight some of those things that you were talking. I won't give a summary of it, but I will highlight some things that people should look for. And then also the academic vision, so.
And Dr. Baker, I know we discussed, thinking about some topics for the future. So, of course, it does not need to be done at this meeting, but the next time we come before you, we would love to hear your thoughts on, and Dr. Baker, what are proposed topics for the year, knowing that there are some that you're always going to want to hear about, grad rates, test scores, things of that nature, but if there are other things, we'd love to hear it.
So, and then our plan for mapping out future meetings is the Monday following this meeting. I'll meet with Superintendent and Jonathan Harper, and we'll discuss the next meeting and any proceedings. So if there's anything that you know of now that's really pressing, we can talk about it now, or let me or Superintendent know by Monday. We did discuss a need to have a longer discussion on third grade reading at the next meeting.
So we'll be seeing you on Monday, Dr. Baker,
Yeah.
and then we can firm up
Yeah,
those
and
topics.
Send me any notes that you'd like
Yep.
to consider.
Right, we can send stuff to you.
Yeah, just send between now and Monday morning.
Okay.
So, and then, that's just to discuss next meeting. So
Absolutely.
you can send it anytime you want to, so. All right, well, thanks, very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome
Appreciate it.
aboard, Jonathan and
very
Superintendent.
much.
So.